Hi all, this is an analysis of Book 5 of Meditations, and it's been a little while since I've done an analysis, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty. There's a couple of different themes here, so we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. But I noticed, looking at the first part, it seems that Marcus here is talking about duty, what needs to be done, even when it's uncomfortable to do so. It reminds me of when he says getting up to do a man's work, like bees collecting the pollen for honey, and plants, birds, ants doing their daily work without complaint, just because that's what they have to do. And a man being more sophisticated than that, or a woman, of course. Humankind being far more sophisticated and intelligent. Sometimes that's our weakness. But far less we should be complaining about what we need to do. And it reminds me of a saying about life's about picking your uncomfortable, you know. You can pick your uncomfortable to get up early, go to the gym, read thought-provoking books, helping others, becoming the best version of yourself, or you can sit at home, do nothing, not work, not do anything, and then through all these things become depressed, become sick. That's your uncomfortable. So you pick what areas you become uncomfortable in, and it's much more virtuous to pick the uncomfortable today than delay it later on. Also, I think another running theme is mind over matter, controlling your thoughts. Being in control of your thoughts means being in control of your mind, which means being in control of your body. I think there's often an argument over what comes or what you should work on first if you have to pick one, body or mind. But I think obviously both are important, and I think in recent times I've heard about many people saying that if you focus on your body, the mind follows. Sometimes focusing on your mind, you can overthink. Trying to overthink your way out of a problem isn't always the best way. So it's interesting. But of course, focusing on both if possible. Marcus again touches upon themes of integrity, doing and saying what is right, irrespective of what others think or say, or how that influences them. If you think this is the right thing, I mean, we could always be wrong, even if we speak up. And I mean, that gives the opportunity for others to correct us. And if we're humble, we can admit to wrongdoing if we are wrong, or maybe we can convince them of how we think in a certain way. There is themes of dependency on earth. I think Marcus used the language use and abuse of the things that we need and want, which I found interesting language. I think we take it for granted. Just even living, we consume so many things, even just, something as simple as a cup of coffee, all the energy and materials that go into that paper cup. It's incredible when you really think about the impact, and it's these themes of conservation are very strong today. But interestingly, 2,000 years ago, it seems that these were also front of mind for some people. I mean, this man was an emperor. That would give him a certain view over others. If you think about if someone was a slave, that they wouldn't really be thinking about things of that nature in their day-to-day. They would just be thinking more so about having to do the things they need to do for that day, and also maybe the possibility of having something to eat. Something I wrote down here as well, Marcus writes, they cannot admire you for your intellect, but for your virtues. That was kind of thought-provoking. I think he's saying intellect is something you're born with, and of course you can train that up through different things and education, but effectively, for a large part of your brain power, how smart you are is inherent. But what isn't inherent is the good that you do, the virtues that you display, and the good you do for others. That can truly be admired by others. Also spoke about doing the thing that you need to do, doing it silently, just as the bee makes the honey. I really like Marcus's analogies, especially when they use animals. But bees and ants are really good examples because they are almost robotic in a way in how they work and work efficiently and do what they need to do. And again, far less sophisticated than us as humans. We, more than them, should be able to do what we need to do. I've written down, nature is a doctor. We have been described no more than we can handle. Better, this is fate, chance, the outcome. Whether this is fate, chance, the outcome is the same. So there's obviously different beliefs and schools of thought on different things, regardless of what you believe or think. If you have a responsibility to do, you need to deal with it and deal with it in a way that, so worrying about the things that you can control. If you can't control it, I know it's an oversimplification, but don't stress about it. Brings another saying to mind. If you have to eat a frog, if you have to eat a frog in a day, eat the frog in the morning. Get the uncomfortable tasks done out of the way. Gives you a sense of accomplishment. It helps you knock off those smaller things, and it helps to not have something that you're trying to avoid all day. What else have I written down? To see here most of all that this is written by a man. Oh, so as I was reading, so part 9 in particular, it seemed you can see most of all that he's writing to himself. He's not writing for an audience. It seems that he has a certain bitterness for some subjects. Like he says, don't return to philosophy as a student. Sort of as a student returns to the tutor, or a schoolboy returns to the tutor. I will admit I didn't look up this part, but rather as a man with ophthalmia returns to his sponge and salve. I'm guessing it means a man returning to something for some form of relief, or someone coming to something, it says, or another to his poultice or lotion. So something that heals you, not something that's is seen as a task or a duty. A source of a relief instead of a burden. Also touch upon the consolation of release. We live our lives, and I think I've mentioned it in previous analyses about how we could have a short life or a long life. We should appreciate the here and now, not get anxious about leaving, not be in a rush to leave, or impatience of delay. Marcus again speaks about the causal and the material, which leads to thoughts on the circle of life. We are born, we come from earth, we return to the earth, the parts that make us up. The metaphysical becomes part of the universe when we die. And that's irrespective of anyone's religious beliefs. That's just science. And touches upon, of course, a bit philosophical. Although back then, philosophy and science were kind of considered one and the same. There is, I've jotted down, we are what we constantly think about. And I think, I can't remember, it could have been from Gladiator if I'm thinking about this correctly. I think maybe it was Marcus Aurelius that says excellence then is not an act but a habit. Some more themes. Bad men not to act in character. Marcus says, don't rely on a bad man not to act in character, which reminds me of sayings about, don't be surprised when people act in line with how they display themselves. And there's a saying about, if a snake bites you, don't be upset that the snake bit you. That's the snake's nature. That's what he does. Also, there's discussion about externals, the things external to us, outside of us. So the things, I think he mentions, the sun, the air, the animals, the grass, everything outside can't influence the inner. And he said that extends to other humans. No matter how badly they make us feel, they can hurt us physically, mentally, socially, in other ways, psychologically. Um, it's how we respond that's important, and that's internal. And I know maybe some people might counter that and say that is an oversimplification. There are some people who can truly hurt you, but I've been reading about I've been reading some psychology books, and I don't have it. There's a book called I don't know, I can't remember the author's name, but The Courage to Be Disliked. I would recommend looking it up. But that is a different take on psychology, about how I think a lot of contemporary psychology is all about, how we're molded as we grow up and things that impact us. But this teaches us that a lot of it is, pretty much all of it is internal, and how we live our lives is how we respond to things, and that can be controlled. I've written down, while we are similarly autonomous, they cannot have the impact on you that you do not allow them, as with any external. So speaking about other people. Revere the ultimate power in you, touching upon the divine. Marcus again mentions the divinity in each of us as humans. So I think people who follow various faiths, there is a belief in, if God created us, that we all carry a piece of divinity in us. We are made in God's image. Something else interesting Marcus mentioned, what does not harm the city does not harm you. And it reminds me of when we deal with our day-to-day lives in the moment, it can feel very difficult. But something that has helped me many times is to think, this problem I'm dealing with now, not to belittle it in any way, but will I be worrying about this in 5 years? Usually the answer is no. And if you think about the most serious problems, and obviously death being one of them, the death of a relative, people, obviously that impacts someone very deeply, but we all move on, some faster than others, some in different ways than others. Sometimes we go through rougher patches than others. But ultimately, I can't think of anyone who is the exact same in 5 years. We all change. Also, one other thing I noticed in this reading was that assuming when others do things wrong to us, it is important to assume ignorance over malevolence, that people, when they do things bad to us, and when I say people do bad things to us, we also do bad things to others, of course. But in 28, when he says, are you angry with the man who smells like a goat or the one with foul breath? As amusing as that is, even though it's annoying in the moment, like particularly with, I think this probably impacts a lot of people, with road rage, traffic rage, people can really annoy you when you're cooped up in a tiny car and want to get somewhere quickly. Don't assume the person is an asshole. Assume that they're maybe having a similarly bad day. Maybe they did something which wasn't intentional, but they just don't want to back down, and that can be many of us who don't want to back down even when they're wrong. Assume ignorance over malevolence. Another theme is to be grateful for life, but be ready for the departure of that release. You'll notice in the way this is written, sometimes it seems like things are being repeated. That's a common thread through this. Things are repeated throughout the same books, throughout the 12 books, in the same books, and in other of the 12 books within Meditations. And again, think and remember that this is a man writing it to himself. He's not writing it for an audience. He's not intending it for it to be perfect. And I think that's what contributes to the beauty of this. Conduct shown towards others, irrespective of outcomes. Being good for the sake of being good. Whether you follow a particular faith or not, I think following a particular faith makes it easier. There's, of course, the atheist argument or the non-theist argument that if someone is good without having a higher power to be scared of, is that not a better version of good? I'm not going to get into that debate, but whatever works for you. 32. Why do unskilled and ignorant minds confound the skillful and wise? Reminds me of a often stated quote that if you argue with an idiot, he will bring you down to his level and he'll beat you with experience. And when I say he, that of course can refer to he or she. 33 touches upon the temporality of life. I knew I would stumble on that. 35 again touches upon no harm done to the community should harm the individual, and not to stress about these things. 36, the thread I've got down here is that grief is very external. Remember as well, Marcus lost a child, which arguably is one of the hardest things to go through in life. Now, people may say Marcus was an emperor, he was rich, he had a lot of power. Very true, all very true things. I don't think that should be discounted. That does not take away from the fact that people who are wealthy not only have their own issues and problems. Being in a position like that, you would be worried about your life at all times, especially during ancient Rome. It was very much about who was next in line and how they could go about getting their position and doing it without getting caught. And even if they did get caught, they would be in power then. But of course, regardless of social or economic levels in society, losing a child is one of the hardest things. 37. There was a time when I met luck at every turn. You make your own luck, and luck is also the recognition of luck. This reminds me of a friend of mine was telling me a story about how he said he was really lucky, and I said, oh, okay, what happened? And he said he was in an accident. I can't remember the exact story. I was trying to remember it before starting this analysis, but it was something along the lines of he had an accident and he made a claim and he got paid out or something. And then he was able to use some of the money. I don't know if there was a bit extra, and he was able to use the money for something else, for another car. He ended up being overall worse off, but he said it was lucky he had the accident then or something. And it struck me at that time, I was thinking, wouldn't you have been luckier if the accident didn't happen in the first place? And I guess everything is perspective, right? Some people say, some people will be in a car accident and break their leg and consider that lucky. Others will consider that unlucky. It's all about perspective. One last theme that I'll mention is reading this passage. Marcus talks about death, and it just reminded me of something about how I've heard people say you die twice, and the first time you die is when you breathe your last, and the last time you die is when your name is said for the last time. And I think Marcus touched upon that in this passage when he mentioned, I can't find the part, but he mentioned about dying and going into the ether. Number 33, in no time at all, ashes or bare bones, a mere name or not even a name, and if a name, only sound and echo. That's what sort of came out to me from that part. But yeah, I did really like this passage. I feel like there were a lot of different threads, but they kind of came together and wrapped up very nicely. And there was a bit of repetition. But I think the repetition is really good because it really hammers home a lot of these themes. But yep, that was my reading of this passage, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learnt as much from it as I did. Thank you.